from the School of Social Work and got my MSW, recently licensed. I do also hold certificates in the Latinx Initiatives for Service Training and Assessment from Rutgers as well, and my school social work cert. And just a fun fact, I'm a dog mom and I love musical theater.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Debra, but I like to be called Debbie. I'm a third year doctoral student at St. Elizabeth University in their counseling program. I've actually been working with children ages 5 and up, especially first graders and second graders at the Patterson School District. I work with children with learning disabilities, and we also incorporate social emotional learning curriculums. I've been in the Boys and Girls Club for 10 years, but I've been working in this specific area of theirs for 5 years. I am a first generation SU graduate, very proud of that. I come from the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Um, I have my bachelor's in psychology and criminal justice with a minor in sociology. I enjoy reading psychological thrillers and horror books. I actually am trilingual, so I speak Spanish, French, and English, and I love playing soccer. So I'm really excited and happy to be here. And with that, we'll get started.
Yeah, so in this presentation, we want to explore the important role of cultural competence in Latinx mental health care. So we want to address cultural stigma as it's essential to improving client engagement, while understanding systemic inequalities also allows providers to to develop strategies that promote equity in both access and delivery of mental health services. Self-care is also a vital part as, resilient providers also offer support to their clients, better support to their clients. After all, you can't pour from an empty cup. So we'll also touch upon the Latinx mental health providers bringing their own unique cultural perspectives that ultimately strengthen the therapeutic relationships and enhance the relevance of treatment approaches. We'll also discuss the importance of professional representation in the mental health field as seeing oneself reflected in a provider can be deeply validating and help combat harmful stereotypes. And then additionally, we'll examine the role of peer support in fostering connection and healing within the community, where, ultimately our goal is to empower you through education, knowledge of support networks, and, giving you accessible resources, equipping you with the tools to advocate for and provide effective, culturally responsive mental health care. So we'll be talking about Latinx mental health providers facing unique challenges that impact their well-being and effectiveness within the field. Cultural stigma, language barriers, and systemic inequalities create significant obstacles, while cultural expectations and pressures add to their stress. Additionally, experiences of discrimination can further exacerbate these stress levels, increasing the risk of burnout. And then recognizing and addressing these barriers is essential to supporting our Latinx providers and ensuring their long-term success within the field. You can go to the next slide.
Mhm. Um, it doesn't want to move.
Technology is always great until it's not, right? No matter
I know.
how often we practice.
Oh, look at that.
We always have an answer, right?
So Latinx mental health providers must navigate cultural stigma, which deeply impacts both their clients and their own well-being. Mental health is often considered taboo within the Latinx community, leading to a lack of education and awareness that discourages help-seeking behaviors, which is where the saying, La ropa sucia se lava en casa, or don't air your dirty laundry, comes from. It's that idea that, you deal with issues on your own or keep support networks kind of capped off at your immediate family, which we'll get into in a little bit. Things such as gender role expectations, such as machismo and marianismo, which are kind of these ideals of gender expectations, where machismo is representing the idea that a man is, typically more strong, more physical, stoic, and marianismo represents the expectation of a woman to be the more submissive, emotional, nurturing figure. All these ideals kind of work together to reinforce the idea of people feeling like they need to handle stress on their own rather than seeking out outside help. Even further, providers also face compounded stress from the stigma surrounding mental health. Part of it is dealing with these issues, creating a barrier for clients to receive their help, but a huge part of it that we don't often talk about is the stress that bicultural providers face in their workplaces, including the pressure to code switch or, alter the way that they speak, dress, interact with their colleagues, in order to advance in their field or even just gain acceptance in their work environment. And then along with that, navigating the challenges of acculturation, especially for immigrants, it adds another layer to the equation. So addressing these cultural barriers is one of the first steps, such an important step, in fostering a more supportive and inclusive mental health environment all around. So beyond cultural stigma, language barriers also present another significant challenge for Latinx mental health providers, affecting both their practice and their own access to support. So while bilingual proficiency can enhance therapeutic effectiveness and strengthen client relationships, differences in dialects, cultural expressions, and terminology can still hinder communication and connection. Additionally, culturally bound symptoms or mental health conditions that are specific to certain cultures often lack direct translations, making it difficult for bilingual clinicians to navigate diagnostic frameworks. Where on the other hand, providers who primarily speak Spanish struggle to find, professional resources and support in their native language, mirroring the challenges that their clients face in accessing appropriate care. Addressing these language barriers is crucial to ensuring equitable and effective mental health services on both parties' ends. And then I also pulled this quote from the New York State Psychiatric Institute's article on providing psychotherapy in Spanish that I think really sums up this issue. It reads, "For US-born and trained clinicians, conversational Spanish fluency doesn't necessarily translate to ease and fluency when providing care in Spanish. There is often a knowledge and skill gap, and bridging it requires specialized training, education, and a lot of practice." So really having access to resources for bilingual, bicultural mental health providers is such a pressing need in order to provide more effective service and set up clinicians for future success. So in addition to cultural and language barriers, systemic inequalities further exacerbate the challenges faced by Latinx mental health providers, impacting their career advancement, financial stability, and overall well-being. Latinx clinicians remain significantly underrepresented in leadership roles, holding only 3% of such positions, which is crazy to me, which limits their professional visibility, mentorship opportunities, and workplace inclusivity. So this underrepresentation often results in tokenism, workplace isolation, and exposure to microaggressions, contributing to, things such as imposter syndrome or race-related stress. Discriminatory practices, both subtle and overt, hinder career progression, with Latinx providers frequently excluded from things such as promotions, important meetings, and, access to broader decision-making spaces. Wage disparities further widen these gaps as Latinx clinicians earn significantly less than their non-Latinx counterparts, making it harder to sustain long-term careers in the field. Limited access to professional resources only compounds these difficulties, restricting opportunities for growth and equitable support. And additionally, immigration-related stressors affect both providers and clients, as many first-generation immigrants can carry trauma from migration experiences, face pressures to assimilate, and navigate complex acculturational challenges. Strict immigration policies can also affect the sense of trust in therapeutic relationships, with clients fearing to disclose, their immigration status, making it even more difficult to seek and receive appropriate care. These systemic barriers not only impact Latinx providers, but also shape the experiences that the community that they serve face, highlighting the urgent need for structural change in the mental health field.
And then we talked a little bit about familismo as a central Latinx cultural value. Just to put myself as an example, I'm from the Dominican Republic, and we are very much tight and knit as a family. even to the point of my mom still holds my master's and my bachelor's degree in the house. It's very much referring to the importance of a strong family loyalty, right? That closeness, how well they get along, contributing to the well-being of not only themselves, but also just the family system as a whole. And it doesn't just extend to like family, like mom and dad, and maybe grandma and grandpa. Sometimes it even extends further than that, maybe uncles and aunts that have also are also part of that close-knit family and that closeness, right, and familismo, and that kinship network, right? So I remember for me as a first generation student, how important it was for me to finish college and to get a higher education. And at the end of the day, right, familismo is it's not just my degree, it's the family's degree. I'm not just getting this doctorate, the entire family is getting this doctorate. And that is very important when you're working with Latinx culture, because that is a very important component that they use and that they have engraved in their family. And it is a cultural value. And so when we're working with this population, it's important to, not with just familismo, any cultural value that this population has needs to be taken into important in consideration, and it needs to be valued as a part of themselves, not as a different part of their identity. And then it's about cultural competence, which is being culturally informed of who you're helping, right? It recognizes that the client comes from a diverse background. Sometimes the client might not be just Mexican or just Dominican or just Haitian. Like I've stated before, I'm both Haitian and Dominican. And so these are two cultures that I am handling, on top of that being here in the United States from a very young age, right? It's enhancing treatment outcomes through personalized approaches to healing. So it's more of looking into the culture that this client has, and what are the values that they possess? How is that integrated into their overall identity, right? What kind of care can we give? If they are spiritual, how can we integrate spiritual approaches to help them heal or to give resources in that manner, right? Community trust building. What are the resources around their community that we can provide for them where they feel that sense of community, right? Again, familismo, building that identity around those values, but also having those resources that align with those values. And cultural competence isn't just about, okay, well, you're Dominican or Haitian or Ecuadorian. Tell me about your culture. It's taking that a step further and being able to say, I also want to learn about my client's culture, but it's not always going to come just from them. Sometimes we have to take a step back and read about that culture, get familiarized with that culture. Because once this person comes in and we're constantly asking them questions, they might feel like, well, I feel like I'm telling you everything. And it doesn't seem like you took the time to also learn where I come from, what kind of values hold. And again, cultural competence is not about knowing everything about that culture, but it's about at least familiarizing yourself with key values that they uphold. So again, right, how do we integrate those values into the resources that we're coming up with to help the clients? This is actually one of my favorite topics to talk about, common myths about Latino mental health. And if you look at the slide, one of them is mental health issues are a sign of weakness. Therapy is only for people with serial mental illness. This is very much rooted in machismo, right? If you are a man in the Latinx culture and you're suffering maybe from depression or anxiety, you're then seen as weak, right? I remember going into psychology, and my mom's like, "Oh, like, are you gonna go help crazy people?" It sounds very much different in Spanish, but that was basically the myth, that she believed that the only way that you can go to a psychologist is that you're having some kind of mental issue, right? And it's important that when you're working with someone to deconstruct that myth, because therapy is also about, or the Latino mental health is also about, maybe you're going through a work shortage and you're feeling sad, not necessarily depressed, but you're trying to work through those feelings of feeling like you're not enough or you're not helping enough in the household. So that's actually one of my favorite myths to talk about. And it's important that when you're working with your client, you can also bring up what some kind of myth that they have in mental health, and what does mental health mean to them? The second one is saying, don't air your dirty laundry. Everything that you talk or that you go through needs to stay in the family, and that can very much be a double-edged sword of feminismo, because you want to keep it in the family, but then let's talk about extended family. Do we talk to those people or about the issues that are coming up or about any mental health problems that are arising inside of the family? And then the third one is mental health issues will go away on their own. Prayer and faith are all you need to overcome challenges, right? So therapy and counseling in conjunction with cultural practices can offer a more comprehensive approach. So it's not necessarily trying to challenge that idea that you can't pray because that's not the solution to your problems in terms of this example, but it's more of like, how can we integrate that perspective while also being able to give other resources and other kinds of avenues that we can utilize in order to better the situation or whatever mental health issue might be going on. And then celebrating community, right? Community ties foster a sense of belonging, positively influencing mental health providers' resilience and well-being. Cultural significance, collaborative engagement, and shared cultural identity are all things that should be celebrated within the community. Again, in the Latino community, family community is very much enmeshed, and cultural significance, a lot of people, that's their identity, right? I come from the Dominican Republic. My identities were very vibrant. I know a lot of the rumors are we eat a lot of plátano. We love being in family, right? La bachata. So that's a celebration in that community. It makes me feel like I belong in that community. That can be something that applies to the person that you're working with, right? What are some things in your community that are significant to you? And then you can tie that back to values, right? What are the values that are more important than others, because there will be values that are taken into consideration more than others. How can you celebrate that as well? And how can they now bring that into their community? Collaborative engagement is not only just the client and their community, but how are you having a collaborative engagement with the person that you're working with? The relationship between you and the client is very important because that is how you're going to grow and build and help and be able to foster that sense of that you guys are working together, which again can also be a community to them if they don't have one outside of this alliance that you guys are creating. So how can you then bring that into helping them celebrate that in their community? And then shared cultural identity. I believe that this one is very important, but it's also very tricky because if I am Dominican and I'm working with a Dominican client, that does not necessarily mean that we have the same background or the same upbringing. And so it's very important to, while we can connect because we're both Dominican and some of our experiences might be different, their community might look different from mine. And not only does that help me as a counselor to be able to help them, because now I'm able to see, just because I'm Dominican does not mean that I know everything that other Dominicans have gone through or that their community looks similar to mine. But it still allows me to have a foot inside of the door because I'm more familiar with that community. Again, that does not mean that I know everything. And then that allows me to, again, be able to celebrate that with them when they bring something in that's, out of the norm of being Dominican. That's something that can be celebrated and we can positively influence their mental health, especially if we come from the same cultural identity, because it lets them know that they're not alone and that they understand. That can even go into the linguistic barriers. There's a lot of things that can be lost in translation. When I speak with my clients in Spanish, there's a lot of things that I can't translate to English in a sense that my supervisor may be able to help. But then again, that's also part of that community. And the way I can use that is to bring in resources and that I can bring into with the client that can help them be more resilient and also foster a better well-being. And then sharing success stories, right? Highlighting significant contributions of Latinx mental health providers can enrich community narrative and inspire future generations. So that can even go as as easily as maybe sharing a story of your own while you're working with them, celebrating their achievements. If they come in, I just got my GED or I'm rolling into college, right? Make it a celebration for them because this might be a barrier that they have overcome and they may be the first in their family to go to college. Learning from peers, right? As a mental health person that is assisting others, I'm constantly learning from other people's, just as you, I'm pretty sure we all have someone that we say, oh my God, they're so smart, or they know so much, or just bouncing off ideas of each other can be so important. And then we can also be given resources to one another, and we can take that into our client. So everything we're doing is mostly in the perspective that we're going to be able to help our clients, and we're bringing that into a session with them or help with them. And then cultural heritage strength, right? What is what you're bringing in? How are the success stories of people that come before you help you moving forward? And how can your story help other Latin mental health providers in terms of where they're going in the future as well? So I put myself as an example. My narrative, my cultural heritage, the strength that I bring within my family are most likely going to help my brothers when they're going into college or high school. And then how can they also then continue to spill that over to the generations that come after them? But as mental health providers, it's important to also network and keep that open in terms of sharing success stories because we never know who else can help us. And we are like, oh, I'm going through this alone. And then we hear someone going through that as well. We hold that in, and now whatever we got from that conversation, we're able to then bring into the person that we're assisting. And then collaborative initiatives, right? Community leadership partnerships. For example, like I was very grateful to be able to collaborate with Good Grief in order to do other presentations as well. I was able to meet other Latin mental health providers or just mental health providers that I was able to communicate with and reach out through LinkedIn. I've done other partnerships as well. This has helped me come up with resources that I can bring into my therapy sessions with my clients. So it's very important that we get out there and be able to build that community of resources, not only for our benefit, but for the benefit of those individuals that we are assisting. Especially in the Latinx community, it can be very powerful to hear other stories of those that come before us and build that network around that. There's also tailored programming, like today, this presentation that we're giving, Michelle and I are presenting, right? How can you then take this and even make your own tailored programming? There's other avenues where you can also reach out to organizations where you can create a tailored program and you can share with them, whether that be for tailored for African Americans, for Latinos, for a specific culture or a specific topic, right? Sharing your knowledge with others, mental health providers that can then give them resources to bring out, and even they can create their own tailored programming. And then the last one is resource sharing initiatives, right? I know that at my school in St. Elizabeth, we have a folder where we're constantly being able to put in resources for any kind of situation or community or population that we're working with. How can you then be able to create maybe a drive where you can share within your own organization, or can you then go into another organization and become a member or whatever that looks like in order to continue not only sharing resources, but also gaining resources?
So building peer support networks. The way we want to go about supporting our Latinx mental health providers is to actually build those supportive networks that bicultural clinicians can lean on. Peer support is such a powerful tool that can be used to enhance resilience through shared experiences, as Debbie had mentioned, and fostering that camaraderie between Latinx providers. Engagement in these sorts of networks often leads to an increase of job satisfaction, which in turn reduces burnout and promotes emotional well-being in a way that can be maybe a little bit more sustainable, or at least can help a provider, be held a little bit more accountable for their self-care amongst the stressors that I mentioned earlier. Additionally, peer support systems offer the unique ability to network and facilitate and the sharing of knowledge, problem solving, and skill development resources, as well as, give professional opportunities amongst clinicians. We see that participating in peer support significantly enhances emotional resilience with a reported 30% decrease in burnout rates among professionals, as well as a 25% decrease in stress levels, which kind of affirms the importance of the role of peer support in wellness. The idea here is overall to develop a more structured intervention which integrates the peer support framework with the clinical interventions needed to meet the needs of providers.
So then we talk a little bit about tackling burnout. Um, I don't know about anyone in this room, but I know sometimes I can be extremely burnt out. And that's something that is very normal and it's going to happen, not only because we're in the mental health profession, but it's just part of life. Burnout is a state of chronic stress that leads to emotional, physical, and mental exhaustion. And some of the key signs include fatigue, cynicism, decreased productivity, and a sense of ineffectiveness and helplessness. But I do want to tackle a specific kind of burnout, which is called empathy burnout. And this kind of burnout is a form of emotional exhaustion that occurs when someone expends too much mental, emotional, and physical energy caring for others. In the mental health profession, it's normal for us to carry our clients' burden. It doesn't matter how small they may be. If they affect us in some kind of way, shape, or form. And so it's important to recognize when we're having empathy burnout. And that kind of burnout can seem when we're talking to them, we might not be as engaged as we usually are. Our sympathy for them, our sympathy and empathy for them may be lower than usual. When we're talking to them, we want them to finish talking faster, or there's times where we don't even want to meet with them. So it's very important to not only understand that this is natural, but also recognizing the signs of when this kind of burnout is arising, or just noticing the signs of, hey, maybe I am burning out empathically and I need to take a step back. So, one of the topics is effective self care strategies and mindfulness practices. And I would just like to take a minute or two, if you can, everyone, to just type in the chat what kind of self care strategies or mindfulness practices you engage in when you feel like you're burning out.
Oh, we have hot yoga.
Oh,
I've never done hot yoga. I've always been a little scared. I've always feel like, oh my God, what if I like pass out or something like that? I don't know. We have spending time with my family and my dog, getting my nails done, reading poetry, calling a friend, meditation, a run every morning to start my day regulated. Not a very fast one, but always feels like a great release. Taking a nap, yes. Taking some needed space, soaking in a tub of water. Yeah, Michelle also agrees that, her dog is her self-care buddy. Rewatching old shows and movies. Yes, I do that. That's how I know like something's up. If I'm like rewatching a series that I've seen many, many times, I'm like, oh, I'm burning out because I this is my comfort shows. Anyone else? I love all of these. I'm gonna have to like send the chat to you all as well. We have a dance party. Yes. A prayer room. Yes, Sonia, I agree. Some people, spirituality is their way of kind of bringing themselves back. We have praying, chatting with a friend, comfort shows, exercise. I think sometimes even crying, like crying can be one of those like releases that, especially myself coming from a Puerto Rican community where, girls are not supposed to cry because then we're weak. Having that moment where I could just let it out and then think of 800 other things that I want to cry about at the same time. We have exercise, meditation. Yes, you do feel lighter after you cry, Sonia. I agree. Yes. Oh, well, Caitlin writes, yes, I know I needed a run when all of a sudden I'm in the middle of it and burst into tears. Yes. Yes. It's amazing the things that we hold on to when we're doing this empathic and sympathetic work. And we don't even realize it until we have a moment to ourselves and we're like, oh my gosh, I need to cry right now.
yes.
Thank you, Debbie, for that.
Thank you everyone for sharing. And I hope that this is something that, you can look back and really recognize, okay, this is something that I do when I'm burning out and it actually helps. And it's important to understand that, we can't pour from an empty cup. And it doesn't make us less than, or it makes us be there for our clients less. Actually, because we're taking care of ourselves, we're then going to have more energy to be able to show up for them the way that they need us to show up for them. So then community support networks, right? What are some community support networks that you can go into that might be maybe in the community that your client or that you're working with, and there's other ways of being able to then go to that community. Maybe one of those communities can be a church. I know a lot of people said that they work out. Actually, a community also can be the gym, right? You have a community in the gym. So these are just some kinds of examples that you can get in order to have that support for yourself. Because while you are helping others and you're creating the support for others, what supports are you creating for yourself, right? That can be maybe going out with friends, right? That network of friends, or networking, going to conference. Even that is a network in itself. And you're in a community that is there for the same cause that you're there for. I don't know if Michelle and Annette felt this way when we went to the Latino conference, but I really felt like I was in the Dominican Republic
Yes,
in a backyard party. Like I felt
yes,
like I was
yes.
amongst my people, and that made me feel really good. I don't know if you guys felt that way as
Oh,
well.
it felt amazing. It felt, when you, especially for myself, I rarely see women that look like me that are in this profession, that are, good at it as well, that are really putting their all into it, but still have their culture tied to it. Oftentimes we're told to kind of suppress that. And that's where that code switching comes in, where we come, we're not sure who we are.
Yeah,
So yes, Debbie, thank you for mentioning that, because absolutely, I felt like I was home. I
yeah,
felt like I was with people who not only understood what I was saying to them, but understood who I was holistically, like
yes,
everything about me.
yes.
Yeah, for sure. I also was very grateful to hear everybody's stories as they were talking about, their developing professional careers. And they were going through a lot of the same things that I'm going through now, that I'm like, okay, I can breathe. They
Mhm.
got there. I can get there eventually. So it was really such a cool experience.
We were seen. That's how I felt. I felt like,
Yes,
wow, like somebody sees me and this is amazing.
definitely, definitely. Thank you both for sharing as well. And then lastly, systemic solutions. So that may look like community mental health system, right? Building a strong network of community-based mental health services, including peer support, outreach programs, integrated care models. These all can be integrated and can provide more accessible and comprehensive care for individuals with mental health needs. Maybe you have a client who's really, suffering with maybe anxiety. Maybe there's an anxiety model that you can work with in order to help them look for resources and reduce that anxiety. It can also be early intervention programs. Maybe someone that you're working with, their job is going to lay people off soon. How can we get them to a space where they're okay with this? Obviously, it's never okay to be laid off your job, but how can we intervene early for them, maybe to start looking for another job, or give them tools that they can use, that while they're in a process of this, they can regulate and they don't feel like everything's falling down on them, right? Diversion programs, right? This can be maybe in a hospital settings, in the emergency departments, reducing the number of individuals with mental health needs that can end up in crisis. So how do we also intervene early there to be able to support this person so that it doesn't escalate, and it remains maybe not as hectic as it should become. Maybe even something as simple as strengthening the workforce, right? What are some initiatives that you can create in your workplace that can change some rules, or if something needs to be more diversified, right? Maybe you need to ask for more coffee, right? Just small little things that can down the road create a big change.
So we don't want to leave you high and dry. So I put together some lists of organizations that offer tailored resources for Latinx providers, which can help enhance access to, professional assistance. So the following organizations all work to further provide further education on not only what we talked about today, but also adjacent topics. But what I found really exciting was that many of them serve as points of connection. So, for example, Latinx Therapy offers a directory of Latinx therapists, access to their therapy shop where you can browse for tools and access resources for better support your clients, and links to podcast episodes that discuss mental health topics in Spanish. Por Nosotros is another organization that the Hispanic Federation launched in 2022, which piloted a program designed to reduce stigma and address mental health issues among Latino community-based organizations and their frontline staff impacted by the stress of providing services during and post-COVID. They hold in-person support groups, healthy lifestyle classes, learning circles, online classes, things like that. And then lastly, just in general, take advantage of, the conferences, events, webinars led by Latinx Trailblazers. There's such a wealth of knowledge out there waiting to be shared and received. And much of the time, other professionals, colleagues, and peers are very, very happy to share it. So truly, it's one of my best suggestions just to, go out there, utilize your network, and utilize all these free resources that are out there. So yeah. Thank you all. Just to sum everything up a little bit, to create lasting change, it's essential for Latinx mental health providers to build strong supportive networks that foster resilience, reduce isolation, and sustain motivation in the field. Strengthening peer connections and engaging proactively with the community can empower providers to cultivate a culture of collective support and growth. While systemic barriers persist, progress is happening. Federal legislators have introduced bipartisan policies aimed at expanding and diversifying the mental health workforce to better serve the Latinx community. So initiatives such as the Mental Health Workforce and Language Access Act of 2023 seek to recruit bilingual providers, while the Care for Mental Health Professionals Act and the Mental Health Professionals Workplace Shortage Loan Repayment Act of 2023 aim to improve access to care in underserved areas and support providers financially. So now more than ever, it's imperative to take on the role of an advocate, both for yourself and the Latinx community, by recognizing when support is needed and actively seeking it. Change is happening, and by standing together, we can continue to break these barriers and foster a more equitable mental health field. Thank you all for being here and listening to us talk.
Thank you, ladies. This was amazing. For those of you who, have to hop off real quick, or if you don't have any questions, I also put into the chat our survey. Please, please, please fill that out so that we can continue to bring you webinar topics such as these. I also want to say that we will be closing out our webinar series with our very own Miss Debbie, who will be doing a webinar completely in Spanish. So please, 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 spread the word, let them know that there's going to be a webinar in their language addressing things that they're probably used to feeling but not used to discussing. So I'm really excited about that. Please share that with all your Spanish speaking friends, family members, parents, aunts, uncles, primos, whoever, because I think it's going to be a really good one. Thank you all for coming here with us. If anyone has any questions for Debbie and Michelle, you can put it in the chat, or you can use the Q&A feature. But if not, we will give you back the rest of your afternoon. The webinar will be on June 15th. June 15th, at same time at 12. I put it into the chat. I will also be sending an email out to everyone. If you ladies would like to provide the slides along with any social media handles so that they can follow you. We can also, oh, Renelle, I'm so sorry. If you cannot open the survey, I will also send that to you in a follow-up email because I actually don't have access to the surveys. That's how we keep our stuff, separate so that we know that I wasn't in there writing, this was amazing. So I apologize if you can't open the survey. I will circle back with our director and see how we can get that survey out to you. My apologies. But thank you all again for coming. We're getting a lot of positive feedback, ladies. Is there anything else that you would like to say? I was writing down like crazy when you guys were talking, but I saw someone write in the chat about their grandparents having their diploma. And the funniest thing, I too am the only one in my family who graduated from a university. And when I went in to to meet my counselor, my admissions counselor, she had um her diploma on the wall. And I was like, that's so weird. Like, why do you have that there? And she's like, because it's mine. And I'm like, oh, like it didn't click to me. Like, oh my goodness, yes, some people it's theirs, and they put it on their own wall. And here I was thinking, why isn't it at your abuela's house? Like, that's where all my stuff is. I don't understand why do you have it there? And the other thing that I want to discuss is when you guys talked about that shared cultural identity and being a connection. Um, and I like how you said we don't know everything from that specific culture. I think that's really important because especially when you're one of the only ones in any field, in any organization or any company, they often come to you as if you know everything there is to know about every single, Latin American country. And I'm like, I'm just from Puerto Rico. Like I've never been to the Dominican Republic. I've never been, outside of my little island. So, what might feel right for me might not feel right for the two of you, right? So I think it's really important that you guys mentioned that, and I really appreciate that. And then the last thing I want to say is that when we're talking about culture, we need to understand, especially as providers, that that always comes first, right? The culture is who we are. And that always comes first in anything that we're doing, be it grief work, be it, clinicians, anything like that. Their culture always comes first. And I think that's it. Oh, I have one more thing with regards to empathy burnout. I think Michelle and I think Debbie, you too, we talk about it a lot at Good Grief, and it's doing those tiny tweaks, right? Don't go out today and quit your job and take a painting if you've never painted before, because that's the change that you want to have, right? It's about doing those little tiny tweaks. What can you do right now that can kind of shift the sails of the ship that you're sailing in, right? So please don't go and do something really big and say you're going to work out, 7 days a week, because chances are you might not. I joke around and I tell folks, I haven't gone to the gym and that's already, 20 years that I keep missing it, right? Or I say if I'm running, make sure you're running too because something's chasing me because fitness is not my passion. But I do see how exercise and running and all those things can really, really help you out. I'm just a mother of three who's very tired. All right, guys, thank you so much for everything that you gave us today. Any final thoughts before I let everyone go? Just a quick goodbye to everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us. We look forward to continuing these webinars and having you all with us. De nada, Wesley. Wesley says muchas gracias.
Thank you for coming and listening to us,
Thank you
everyone.
so much. And look out for that recording. Thank you, ladies. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.